My name is Amina, and I was born and raised in a small city in Morocco. My life was very simple. I owned a small shop near the market where people came every day to buy fabric, buttons, thread, and small household items. I opened my shop early in the morning and closed late in the evening. I knew almost everyone who passed by. Mothers came with their children, old men stopped to greet me, and travelers rested in front of my door. I was known as a quiet woman, hard-working and respectful. At that time I was not looking for another faith. I was only looking for peace. Inside my heart I felt empty, even though my life looked complete from the outside. I prayed often, but my prayers felt like words that returned to me without answers. At night, when the city became silent, I lay on my mat and wondered why my heart still felt heavy. I did not understand it, but something inside me was asking questions I could not silence. One day, a foreign woman came into my shop. She spoke gently and smiled often. She bought fabric and asked simple questions about my life. She did not argue or preach. Before leaving, she gave me a small book wrapped in brown paper and said it helped her find hope. I did not open it that day. I hid it in a drawer under my counter, afraid and curious at the same time. Weeks passed. One evening after closing my shop, I opened the book. It was a Bible. I was scared, but I could not stop reading. The words were clear and calm. They spoke about love, forgiveness, and a God who sees the heart. As I read, something warm filled my chest. Felt seen. Felt known. I did not understand everything, but I understood enough to keep reading. I hid the Bible carefully and only read it at night. Over time I felt changed. I became more patient, more kind, and more hopeful. I began to pray in a new way, not louder but deeper. I did not tell anyone. I knew the risk. Still, I could not deny what was happening inside me. I did not know that my quiet reading would soon bring loud consequences. I did not know that my shop, my freedom, and my life would be taken from me. And I did not know that this journey, which began in silence, would one day be shared far beyond the walls of a prison. The day everything changed began like any other day. I woke before sunrise, swept the floor of my shop, and arranged my goods neatly. I greeted my neighbors and smiled as usual. Inside me, however, there was a quiet fear I had learned to live with. The Bible was hidden beneath folded fabric in a locked box. I told myself I was careful. I told myself nothing would happen. That afternoon, 2 officials entered the market. Their presence changed the air. People lowered their voices. Some shops closed early. I stayed open because I believed I had nothing to fear. I was wrong. They came into my shop with firm faces and asked questions that did not sound like questions. They said they had received information. My heart began to beat fast, but I tried to remain calm. They searched my shelves, my drawers, and my storage boxes. When they opened the locked box, time seemed to stop. One of them lifted the Bible and looked at me. Could not speak. My hands trembled. People gathered outside my shop, whispering and staring. I felt exposed, like my soul had been pulled into the open. I was taken away that same day. There was no chance to explain. No chance to speak about what the book meant to me. They said I was spreading a forbidden faith. I said nothing because I knew my words would not save me. As they led me through the streets, I saw familiar faces turn away. Others looked at me with fear. I did not blame them. Fear had become stronger than friendship. I was held in a small room for days. The light was weak, and the walls were cold. I was questioned again and again. They wanted names. They wanted to know who gave me the Bible. I told them I was alone. This made them angrier. They said I was lying. Inside I prayed quietly, not for escape, but for strength. When the sentence was read, my body felt heavy. Life in prison. Those words sounded unreal. I thought of my shop, my simple life, and the small joys I once had. Everything ended in one moment. Yet even as tears fell, something strange happened inside me. I was afraid, but I was not broken. I felt a calm that did not come from myself. I sensed that God had not left me, even here. As I was taken to the prison, iron doors closed behind me. I did not know what awaited me. I did not know how long I would survive. But deep in my heart, I felt that this was not the end of my story. It was only the beginning of a darker chapter that would somehow lead to light. As you listen to this powerful testimony of transformation, we'd love for you to be part of the conversation. Share where you're watching from and what stands out to you in this journey. Your thoughts and reflections aren't just comments. They help shape a genuine dialogue around experiences that have the power to change lives. The prison was older than I expected, with high walls and narrow corridors that smelled of damp stone. When the gates closed behind me, the sound echoed in my heart. I was given a number instead of my name. My clothes were taken, and I was given rough garments that did not fit well. From that moment, I understood that prison was meant to erase who you were. My cell was small and dark. A thin mat lay on the floor, and a small window high above let in little light. I shared the cell with other women, each carrying her own pain. Some were angry. Some were silent. Some cried at night when they thought no one was listening. I felt weak, but I reminded myself to breathe and stay calm. The days followed a hard routine. We woke early, worked, ate little, and returned to our cells. Guards shouted orders. Mistakes were punished. I learned quickly to keep my eyes down and my mouth closed. Inside me, I repeated words I remembered from the Bible, even though I no longer had the book. Those words became my food when my stomach was empty. At night, fear became louder. I thought of my sentence and how long life really was. I wondered if I would ever see the sky without bars again. Sometimes despair tried to take over. But in those moments, I felt a quiet presence with me. Cannot explain it fully. It was like being held from the inside. I felt that God was near, even when everything around me felt far away. Other prisoners noticed that I did not lose hope. Some asked me why I remained calm. I did not preach. I only spoke of love, forgiveness, and a God who sees us even when the world forgets us. Few listened. Others mocked me. I accepted both reactions. One night, after a long day of labor, I felt very weak. As I lay on the cold floor, I believed my strength was gone. In that moment, He revealed to me that suffering was not a sign of abandonment. He let me know that even prisons cannot block His purpose. I did not hear a voice with my ears, but my heart understood clearly. From that night on, something changed. The walls remained the same, but my fear began to shrink. I began to believe that my life had meaning beyond these walls. I did not know how or when, but I trusted that God was working in ways I could not see. I did not know that the greatest mystery was yet to come. I did not know that the prison itself would one day fail to hold me. And I did not know that my name would later be spoken in places I had never seen. After some time in prison, things began to happen that I could not explain, and neither could the other women or the guards. It started quietly. A guard who was always harsh suddenly stopped shouting at me. Another one who never looked at prisoners began to greet me with his eyes. I did not understand why, but I noticed the change. Inside my cell, the atmosphere also felt different. Some nights, when fear usually pressed hard on my chest, I felt deep peace instead. I slept better, even though nothing around me improved. Food was still little. Work was still hard. Punishment still happened. But inside me there was rest. I knew it did not come from me. One evening, a sick woman collapsed in our cell. She was weak and shaking, and everyone was afraid she would die. The guards delayed help. I knelt beside her and prayed quietly. I asked God to show mercy, not because I was strong, but because she was helpless. By morning, her fever reduced, and within days she returned to work. The other women looked at me differently after that. Some were afraid. Some were curious. Soon, women began to come to me at night, whispering their problems. I listened more than I spoke. I shared hope in simple words. I told them that God sees the forgotten and hears the broken. I did not argue or force anything. I only spoke what I had learned in pain. The guards noticed this too. I was questioned again, but this time their tone was uncertain. They warned me to stop influencing others. I nodded and remained silent. Inside, I asked God for wisdom, Not boldness that would destroy me, but gentleness that would protect others. Then something even stranger happened. Doors that were usually locked stayed open longer. I was moved to different work areas without explanation. Records about me seemed unclear. One guard once looked at my file and frowned, saying my name appeared missing from a list. He shook his head and walked away. At night, when I prayed, he revealed to me that I should not fear what was coming. He let me know that what looked impossible to humans was already prepared. I did not understand how, but I trusted. The prison remained the same on the outside, but something unseen was moving within it. I felt like I was standing between two worlds, one of iron and one of promise. I did not yet know how the story would unfold, but I sensed that change was near, and it would not come in a way anyone expected. The night my life changed forever did not begin with noise or warning. It was quiet, like many other nights in prison. We returned from work exhausted, our bodies heavy and our spirits worn. I lay on my mat, staring at the dark ceiling, listening to the slow breathing of the other women. Nothing felt different on the outside, yet inside me there was a strong sense of expectation. As I prayed silently, he revealed to me that this night would not pass like the others. He let me know that fear would try to rise, but I should not follow it. I did not know what that meant, but I held on to the peace that filled my heart. I slept, but my sleep felt light, as if I was waiting. Sometime deep in the night, I woke suddenly. The prison was unusually still. No footsteps, no distant shouting. Even the guards' voices were absent. I sat up and listened. The air felt heavy yet calm. Then I noticed something impossible. The cell door was not fully closed. It stood slightly open. First I thought it was a trap. My heart raced. Prison teaches you not to trust anything good. I remained still, watching. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. One of the women beside me stirred but did not wake. I stood slowly, my legs shaking. The door opened further with the lightest touch. No alarm sounded. As I stepped into the corridor, I expected someone to stop me. No one did. Lights that were usually bright were dim. Gates that should have been locked stood open. I moved forward, not running, not hiding, simply walking. I felt guided, though I saw no one. He revealed to me that I was not alone, even though my eyes saw emptiness. My mind struggled to understand what my body was doing. I passed guard stations with no guards present. Records rooms stood unlocked. At one point I stopped, overwhelmed by fear and disbelief. I whispered a prayer, asking if this was real. He let me know that obedience was more important than understanding. I reached the outer gate. This was the place no prisoner ever crossed. It stood open, wide and silent. Beyond it was darkness and cool air. I stepped outside, and the gate closed slowly behind me, not with force but with finality. I was free. I did not celebrate. I did not shout. I walked until my legs could no longer carry me. Only then did I fall to the ground and cry, not from fear but from awe. I knew that no human plan could explain what had happened. I had not escaped. I had been released. By morning, the prison would search for me and find nothing. No records, no trace. My name would become a mystery. But that night, under the open sky, I knew my life had been spared for a reason greater than myself. When morning came, I was still alive, still breathing free air. The sun rose slowly, and I watched its light touch my face without bars or walls. For a long time I sat in silence, afraid that if I moved, everything would disappear like a dream. But it did not. I was truly outside. I knew I could not stay near the prison. I had no money, no documents, and no plan. I only had faith and the clothes I wore. I walked through small paths, avoiding main roads. Every sound made my heart jump. I expected to hear shouts behind me, but none came. Hunger soon followed. My body was weak from prison life. Late that day, I reached a small village. I hid behind abandoned buildings until night came. I prayed quietly, asking for help. He revealed to me that help would come in an unexpected way. I did not know how, but I trusted. The next morning, An old woman found me as I rested near her house. She did not ask many questions. She looked at me with kindness and gave me bread and water. She let me wash and rest. I did not tell her everything, only that I had suffered and needed to move on. She nodded, as if she understood more than I said. For several weeks, I moved from place to place, always quietly. Sometimes I worked small jobs. Sometimes people helped me without knowing why. Each time fear returned, peace followed. He let me know that I was being protected, even without papers or proof of identity. One night, I met a man who helped travelers cross borders safely. I was afraid to trust him, but I prayed first. I felt calm afterward. I followed his guidance. Through long journeys, hidden vehicles, and silent walks, I crossed out of Morocco. I did not look back. My past life had ended. Eventually, I reached a Christian nation where I was received by believers who listened to my story. They did not rush me. They gave me food, shelter, and time. For the first time, I held a Bible openly without fear. I cried as I read again, not as a prisoner, but as a free woman. The news from home later reached me. The prison searched for me and found nothing. Records were missing. Guards were confused. Some were punished. My name became a question with no answer. To them I disappeared. To God I was being prepared. I knew then that my story was not only about escape. It was about testimony. My life had been spared so that others could know that God still sees, still acts, and still saves in ways humans cannot explain. Freedom was beautiful, but it was also frightening. For a long time, I woke up at night expecting to see prison walls. Loud sounds made me shake. Even in safety, my body remembered fear. The believers who cared for me were patient. They taught me that healing takes time, just like faith grows slowly. I began to learn the language of the country I was in. I attended small gatherings where people prayed and studied the Bible together. No one forced me to speak. I listened more than I talked. As I learned, I realized how much God had carried me when I knew so little. My faith had grown in darkness, and now it was learning to stand in light. After some months, the church leaders asked me to share my story with a small group. My hands trembled as I spoke. I did not want attention. I only wanted truth. As I spoke, I saw tears in their eyes. I understood then that my pain was not wasted. God had turned it into a message of hope. Still, freedom had its own trials. I had no official identity. I lived carefully. I avoided public places at first. Sometimes fear returned, telling me I could still be found. In those moments, He revealed to me that my life was no longer defined by a prison or a country. He let me know that my identity was now in Him. Slowly, I began to speak in more places. I shared how faith can survive without comfort, how love can exist inside suffering, and how obedience matters even when understanding is small. I did not speak against anyone. I spoke for truth, peace, and forgiveness. Some people doubted my story. I did not argue. I understood doubt. I had lived with it myself. I only shared what I lived through. God did the rest. As time passed, joy returned to my life. Not loud joy but deep joy. I learned to laugh again. I learned to trust people again. I learned that freedom is not just the absence of chains, but the presence of peace. I knew that my testimony was reaching beyond the rooms I spoke in. Letters came. Messages came. People in dark places said my story gave them courage. This humbled me. I prayed often, asking God to keep me small and faithful. I also knew that my story was not finished yet. God had more to teach me, and one day He would ask me to encourage others directly, not only with my story but with my life. As time passed, I began to look back on my journey with new understanding. When I was first arrested, I believed my life was over. I thought prison meant failure and loss. Now I see that God was working even when I could not see His hand. Faith, I learned, is not proven in comfort but in pressure. In prison, I had nothing to offer God except my trust. I had no Bible, no church, no support. Yet He met me there. He revealed to me that faith does not depend on place or freedom. It depends on surrender. When everything else is taken away, What remains is what truly matters. I also learned patience. Waiting in prison taught me to listen more than speak. Waiting in freedom taught me to trust more than control. There were many times I wanted answers quickly. He let me know that growth often happens in silence, not in noise. Suffering changed how I see people. I no longer judge quickly. I understand fear better. I understand why people hide, deny, or run. Pain softens the heart if we allow God to shape it. Hardship can either make us bitter or make us gentle. By His grace, I chose gentleness. I learned that God's purpose often moves quietly. My escape was not loud or dramatic. It was calm, careful, and unseen. That taught me that miracles do not always look like fire from heaven. Sometimes they look like open doors and missing records. As I shared these lessons with others, I reminded them that faith is a journey, not a moment. It grows through reading God's Word, through prayer, through obedience, and through love for others. I told them not to compare their path with mine. God writes different stories for different people. In my own life, I continued to study the Bible deeply. Each page felt precious. Words I once read in fear, I now read in peace. I understood them better because I had lived them. Forgiveness, endurance, and hope were no longer ideas. They were memories. I thanked God often, not only for my freedom, but for the strength He gave me in captivity. Both seasons shaped me. Both were necessary. I knew that one day, my story would reach believers who were tired, afraid, or confused. When that day came, I wanted my words to point them not to me, but to God who never abandons His children, no matter where they are. As I continued to share my story, I realized that many believers were carrying silent fears. Some feared rejection. Some feared persecution. Others feared that God had forgotten them because their prayers felt unanswered. When I listened to them, I heard my former self in their words. I told them that fear is not a sign of weak faith. Fear is human. What matters is what we do with it. In prison, fear visited me every day, but I learned not to let it rule me. I learned to bring it before God in prayer, even when my prayers were simple and broken. He revealed to me that faith does not remove fear instantly, but it gives strength to walk through it. I encouraged believers not to be ashamed of small beginnings. My faith began quietly, with hidden reading and whispered prayers. It grew slowly, watered by suffering and obedience. God is not impressed by loud words. He is pleased by sincere hearts. To those facing persecution, I reminded them that God sees everything. Even when injustice feels final, it is not the end. Prison walls could not stop God's work in my life. Human decisions could not cancel divine purpose. He let me know that endurance is powerful, even when it feels unnoticed. I also spoke to those living in freedom but feeling empty. I told them that comfort can sometimes weaken faith if we stop seeking God. Faith must be fed daily through prayer and God's Word. Just as the body needs food, the spirit needs truth. I urged believers to love one another deeply. In prison, kindness saved me many times. A shared piece of bread, a listening ear, a silent prayer made the darkness lighter. Love is not weakness. Love is strength that survives suffering. I reminded them that God uses ordinary people. I was a shop owner, not a leader or scholar. Yet God used my simple obedience to tell a greater story. No life surrendered to Him is wasted. As I spoke these words, I felt responsibility, not pride. He revealed to me that testimony is not about telling how strong we are, but how faithful God is. Our stories are meant to lift others, not ourselves. I knew that my final message would not be about prison or escape, but about how believers should live every day, whether in peace or hardship, with faith, love, and obedience. Now, as I share my story fully, I want every believer to hear this. Your journey with God is precious, and it matters more than anything you may face. Life will test you. Fear will come. Trials will feel unfair. But even in the darkest seasons, God is present. He reveals strength, peace, and guidance when we cannot see a way forward. Pray constantly. Prayer is not just asking for things. It is speaking to the God who sees you, hears you, and knows your heart. In prison, prayer was my lifeline. It did not change the walls around me, but it changed me. It reminded me that I was never alone. Your prayers, even whispered silently, carry power beyond what you can imagine. Study God's Word. The Bible is not just a book. It is a living guide. Teaches forgiveness, endurance, and love. In prison, I had little access to the Bible, yet its words stayed in my heart. Now, with freedom, I read daily, and each time I learn something new. Do not grow tired of reading it. Let it speak to you in every season. Love one another sincerely. People will hurt, misunderstand, and sometimes betray you. That is part of life. But love is the choice to act with kindness, patience, and forgiveness even when it is difficult. In prison, small acts of love made unbearable moments bearable. In life outside, love can be a powerful light in a world that often seems dark. Do not fear suffering. Trials do not mean God has abandoned you. They are opportunities to grow, to witness, and to deepen your faith. Remember, the same God who walked with me through a life sentence also opened doors that humans could not close. Your faithfulness matters, even if no one notices it immediately. Obedience is greater than understanding. You may not always know why things happen. You may not see the end of your struggles. Yet, if you obey God in what is right, He will lead you step by step. My life is proof that His ways are higher than ours, and His plans are perfect even when unseen. Finally, carry hope. Hope is not a wish. Hope is a trust in God's promises. It is believing that He can turn sorrow into testimony, fear into courage, and suffering into strength. Share that hope with others. Encourage those around you. Pray for those who hurt. Speak truth gently. Walk faithfully. Your journey is your testimony. Live it with courage, love, and devotion. Trust Him completely. Obey Him sincerely. Love others fully. Study His Word carefully. Pray constantly. And remember, no matter how impossible a situation may seem, God is always working, always present, and always faithful.